Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. Ko te marama hau, ko tēnei marama te mahuru Māori. This is... Sorry, I'm going to start again because Councillor Rush wouldn't have heard any of that. My microphone wasn't on. Ngā mihi o te marama hau, ko tēnei marama te mahuru Māori. So we're in Māori Language Month now, September. So the kupu, the word for September is mahuru. So when you hear mahuru Māori, it's because it's Māori Language Month in September. He kaupapa I tēnei marama te kōrero I te reo Māori I ngā wā katoa. So our goal in Aotearoa for Māori Language Month is to speak te reo Māori as much as we can. And I'd like to acknowledge and mihi to you all for your efforts on Tuesday. I think everyone's got he pātai tāku. I have a question down pat. Well done. It was really cool to hear it being used in other workshops as well. Hioi anō, however, ka aroha kaore au I etahi rari I tēnei rā. So I don't have any lollies today. I figure that Councillor Rush will be very happy because he would miss out otherwise. But I figure on Tuesdays we can do some learning in our in that environment, and then people are welcome to use te reo during the meetings. I'd invite any efforts. Even there's a whakatauki which says here. He aha te iti he pounamu, so even though it's little, it's precious. So even if you use one word, it's appreciated. So the meeting today is live streamed, and please let Cyrus or I know if you're going to leave the meeting. Morning tea will be at 10:30. We might be finished by then, but we do have a few public participants today and a few little announcements. So we may get close to that. I'd just like to acknowledge the amazing mahi of Crispian and Kimberley who have created us these cheat sheets, which are on the table. These ones stay on the table, but we will be given an A4 copy. So thanks Crispian and Kimberley for doing that. It's really helpful for us to know just how and it's two-sided, how the process works, so that if you want to call a point of order, you can just check before you do that if it actually is a point of order. And now I would just like to hand over to the Mayor, who has a couple of announcements he'd like to make, and I understand that possibly Councillors Foon and Wolf may want to follow. Thank you.
Look, thank you, Councillor Day. It's my sad duty to say a few words, inadequate as they might be, about two of our prominent citizens who we've lost this week. Megan Raitt, who died on Monday, and John Shrapnel, who died yesterday, both of whom will be well known to many Wellingtonians. So with your indulgence, I'd like to say a few words about both of them, and I think Laurie is going to say something about Megan and Simon about John, because I'm sure that I will miss things out that should be said. So look, starting with Megan, obviously probably our most prominent, with a risk of offending a few people, but probably our most prominent individual landscape architect certainly of recent years. I mean, obviously there are other significant landscape architecture firms. She leaves behind a really wonderful legacy in our city, particularly in its public spaces. She established Megan Raitt Architects in 1998, which became Raitt and Associates in 2003. And I just wanted to touch on a few of the really significant contributions that she's made to our city. First of all, particularly around the waterfront, she's been a core part of essentially all of the waterfront development in that period of time. In particular, she was responsible for the design of the Oddlands Plaza area, and that includes the wharf cutout, the Karakia Grove, the remodelling of Whairupo Lagoon and the little headland there. In the waterfront area, again, Waitangi Park has to be her crowning glory on the waterfront. Obviously a very, very difficult project. It conceived in difficult times and a challenging project in the public arena as well. And it's a very difficult site too, very exposed site. But she won the competition effectively to design that from 128 international and national entries. Actually, Gerald gave me a few words about this, Gerald Blunt, who's worked with her many times, but just talking about how carefully considered it is in that environment, bringing in all the, I think it was quite innovative at the time to bring in the water and the cleansing of the water into that area. So it was a pioneer design. She was also the designer of Cobblestone Park in Vivian Street, one of our few inner city small parks. I actually had the privilege of sitting on the judging panel, and it was the bringing together a whole range of different activities there, from the sort of basketball half court to the sitting lawns to the use of trees. The one bit which we would have loved to get in there, but the university never did it, was to open the building out more onto the park. So they just said, we haven't got the money to do it, but it would be nice to be able for them to do that at some stage. And then also on the university, she was part of the team that brought us Victoria University's hub, which of course has made such a massive difference to the livability and the attractiveness of Victoria University. I know that when I went there, it was a pretty bleak sort of a place, but I think the hub has really brought a real life to the centre of to Victoria University. And I do say Victoria University. Megan and team were also designed the remodelling of the cenotaph. And of course, you've got the feature there of the reference to the buried Waipiro stream, and also the better connection to Parliament. So again, a significant impact on our city. And the final one I wanted to mention was Pukayahu National War Memorial Park, which it won a central government design competition. It was delivered under significant, probably unnecessarily significant time pressure to accommodate what was an incredible turnout of 50,000 people spread all over the place for Anzac Day 2015. All I can say is thank heavens the government saw sense and undergrounded the road. Just wish they'd done it a little bit better than they did, but never mind. And for that, Megan and her associates won the prestigious Institute of Landscape Architects George Malcolm Award, which is, I think, is their top, as I understand it, their top award. I'm getting nods from the back there. So that's one of many, many awards that she won over some 25 years of work. And I just want to read one little bit of the citation for that. And it said, Pukayahu is an exercise in sophisticated design and spatial planning, executed with a confidence and attention to detail befitting its status as our National War Memorial Park. The design team expertly weaved together multiple cultural and historic narratives while navigating a myriad of complicated technical challenges to realise both a park as a place of remembrance and a piece of urban infrastructure that offers so much to its surrounding city. And I think that speaks to Megan's tenacity, to her skill, and to her attention to detail. And I think you see that through all of those different pieces of work. Our city is very much the better for the work that she's done. We all enjoy those areas day in, day out, and will continue to do so for many, many, many years to come. And she will be missed by her colleagues. And I wanted to express my sympathies to her colleagues, to her friends, and especially to her partner, Paul, and daughter, Wawe. So John Shrapnel, I wasn't quite as well advanced with my thoughts there, so I'll be a bit more ad-lib with that. But John really was Mr. Wadestown for many decades. He was the Wadestown Residents Association, but he did that in a way which some individual people who, when they do that kind of thing, they tend to get really grumpy, and that's about the only thing they do. They're just grumpy, 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 and we're obviously the target of all of that. But John wasn't like that. He could be grumpy, but he could be constructive as well. Did have a look back, and they said that the Wadestown Residents Association was born from dog smells when dogs were interacting with sewage problems in the area. So that's where they started their journey. But he advocated for things like, he ran the Wadestown Liaison meeting, which was a conglomeration of different Wadestown community groups for many, many years. He was an advocate for the remodelling of the Wadestown Library into basically a library and community space. And he was a sorter out of local issues in a way that, he took that on himself. He was also passionate. He was passionately involved in the arts, particularly, I don't think I ever heard him sing, but in Gilbert and Sullivan. And of course, he had a very long career in broadcasting in all sorts of guises there. I gather he had a namesake cousin, I think. Was that right, Simon? You probably tell me that. Who was an actor in the UK as well. But John will be immensely missed in the Wadestown community. He sort of handed the baton on in recent years. Of course, he had to go through the illness and death of his wife Bronnie, and 4 or 5 years ago. So he will be an enormous loss to the Wadestown community, and he was a lovely man to work alongside as a ward councillor for very many years. So, look, thank you very much for the opportunity of being able to say a few words.
Kia ora. Over to you, Laurie, Councillor Foon.
Kia ora, Madam Chair, and it is right that we honour these great Wellingtonians around this table, so thank you very much for giving us the time. I do want to acknowledge a friendship with Megan Raitt, both through women's leadership and business community and the sustainable business community, and that's how I became more intimately known with her work, and now enjoy those public spaces daily, both to celebrate with friends, but also I cycle through them regularly, and it's always that lovely relief of a haven. You have that experience with her work, and I know she cared greatly about her city, and her input really comes through in her work. I think it was a bit of a shock that she'd passed, because only recently she'd been emailing about wanting to make sure I knew the importance of the water-sensitive urban design, so I'm going to harass all of my colleagues to make sure we're all aware of this too, but also that she really wanted us at WCC to take more care of Waitangi Park particularly, that we needed to do a better job there. So I think I'm cajoling Councillor O'Neill to help me make sure that we're all over that. But yes, sadly I took Megan's ongoing enthusiasm for a sign of wellness, so it did come as a bit of shock this week. But a mutual friend, Stu Farrant, actually helped prepare some words today, which I would like to read out. Megan was a visionary leader who saw the importance of protecting our precious fresh and coastal water long before rules and policy forced us to take action. With an open mind and keen focus for good design, she embedded water-sensitive design into Waitangi Park almost 20 years ago and created what at the time was a globally leading example of how our city can respect and restore this taonga. Megan's passion for the built and natural environment was evident as she crafted spaces enjoyed by all, which brought ecology into our city and made us all feel a little happier as a result. Her energy and drive were infectious and left a mark on all who were lucky enough to work alongside her. Never one to settle for mediocre, she has shaped our city in a way that will endure as a long-lasting legacy. She loved Wellington and we loved her. Thank you.
Ngā mihi, Councillor Wolfe.
Kia ora. Hei tangata, hei tangata, hei tangata. It's about the people, the people, the people. And John Shrapnel was part of the fabric of our community. The mayor's referred to John as being Mr. Wadestown. He was actually more than that. He was an amazing Wellingtonian. We recognised that a few years ago with an absolutely positively Wellingtonian award for him, and all the ward councillors were absolutely proud to have seen that go through. John was passionate. He was intelligent, articulate, and relentless. And if he had something that he felt the community needed to have done for it, he would lead that charge, and in a really wonderful way. I recall John going back to my childhood in the 1970s. He was that broadcaster as well, and he used those communication skills right throughout his time with advocating and lobbying for the community. The baton that he passed on, and his worship referred to that, he was one for succession planning. And one of the great succession plans that has come of that John has left us is his son-in-law, Brendan, who's taken over the role of the Residents Association chair. So, his influence will remain strong. John was respectful, and his lasting contribution to the community will be in its character, its identity, its safety, and its vibrance. Wadestown's like that, and also his mentorship. He mentored a lot of us, including the ward councillors, including myself. He used to come up to you at events. He used to put his arm around you, and he used to have a quiet word. And you knew that if the quiet word wasn't taken on board, it wouldn't be such a quiet word in the future. and you know, I will personally miss John immensely. He was just an amazing man, and I think that, you know, his loss is immense, but his legacy is immense also. Thank you.
Kia ora, ko tuku te rākau kia Councillor Young, so you can kōrero now.
So, I'd just like to talk about John Shrapnel. What would a Lambton Ward councillor know about Mr Wadestown? Well, I actually have a note in my diary, September the 11th, contact John to go and see him. He was well known in Wellington because of his leadership over the men's shed issue, which we never really resolved. As Simon said, he was tireless. However, I have a totally different connection with John. He was a TV journalist when I was about 5 years old. He was flatting across the road from our house in what is now called Batham Drive. It was then Brome Drive. And he had a soft-top red sports car. Now, this would be probably about 1962, I suspect, when people didn't have cars like that in New Zealand. He had brought it back from Britain, and he also had a leather jacket. So, as little girls, we used to think he was so stylish. And that's how I always saw him, even as he grew older. Unfortunately, he also had an image of me locked in his mind, which was a fat little, freckled, dimpled girl with pigtails and always stubbed toes. So no matter how much I said to him, no, I'm grown up now, John, he said, no, you're still a little girl to me. So he was a truly lovely man, did a huge amount for Wellington, and I'm very sorry that we won't be seeing him again. And I'll be going to his funeral on Saturday.
O ngā mihi koutou, moi mai rā I ngā rangatira. So back to the doldrums of the meeting. We'll just move into, absolutely important to acknowledge our Wellingtonians. Apologies, are there any apologies? I know that Councillor Calvert, you need to leave about 10:20, okay. So that's just an early departure, no others. So do we need to do that for an early departure? Do we have a seconder? Yeah, okay, so do I have a seconder for the early departure, Mayor Foster? So I'll now put that to the vote. And Councillor Rush, oh, you're all good?
I'm trying to vote for you.
Seems to be that's unanimous. And now I just call for any conflict of interest declarations. Are there any? Nope. Confirmation of minutes. I move the motion that the Strategy and Policy Committee approve the minutes of the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting held on the 20th of August 2020, having been circulated, may be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Free. So I'll now put that motion to the vote. Councillor Rush says yes. Councillor Calvert, have you? And that is unanimous. There are no items not on the agenda, so we're going to go into our public participation now. So I'd like to welcome Sam Cranfield, know my Sam, if you'd like to come up to the table. And Sam is going to talk to us this morning about the Golden Mile. Oh, you're going to go to the, sorry, not to the table. We're having to change things a little bit because of our social distancing. Thank you. That is perfect, thank you. And if you've got 5 minutes, Sam.
I know. It's taken us, we're a bit late, aren't we?
We are. We didn't anticipate that we were going to have some of those extra bits in the meeting, as you can imagine. So,
Mayor and councillors, thank you for your patience. Can I just background you? Well, first thing up is the Golden Mile, or is it the Golden Desert? Can I just background you? My wife and I, Val, over here, Cranfield, we've been ratepayers here for over 45 years. This is the first time I've ever felt the urge to get up and say something in front of you all. However, and the fact that we're in our mid-70s sort of gives you a bit of a clue that we're not very happy about various things. We live in the Glen and have had a retail business, or my wife has. I have been slightly involved with them in Panama Street, Lambton Quay, and presently in Johnson Street, which is still operating, and a new one in College Street. So we are fairly firmly entrenched in the retail industry, and our daughter, we are now retired, but our daughter, Nicola, now runs these premises and businesses. However, we may be retired, but we have a very onerous sword of Damocles hanging over us. We've got a $750,000 liability for our rent in our building in town because we've got 3 years of lease to continue. And if that business fails, I'm afraid we've got to come up with that. So that's Val and I have $750,000 sitting on the line if the business fails. Now, I just hope you just get that because it's rather important to us because there are 4 points that I think you haven't really thought about by closing off Lambton Quay. And if I can talk to those, car parking is one. We personally, this is Val and I, at our age, we live in the Glen. We've got over 120 steps to get up to the cable car, which is our closest public transport. Otherwise, we've got to walk for about 20 minutes to catch a bus. So I'm not going to be able to carry parcels up and down this staircase, and so therefore we need a car to get in and out of town, and we're going to be able to park it somewhere. Now, if we can't do that, I'm afraid Lower Hutt's going to be the winner because we're going to go to Lower Hutt to do our shopping in the various malls up there because they have plenty of parking and you can walk in and out of the stores. So they will be the saviour for Wellington. But don't forget our age. If you want older people visiting anymore, we can't scooter or skateboard or ride a bike anymore with parcels. We weren't very good at it earlier either. I must admit of falling off scooters in earlier days. Now that's a bit pointless. And secondly, what's actually happened to James Smith's? If any of you can remember it, actually looking at your ages here. It was in Cuba and Manners Mall, and when it was made pedestrian, what happened? It closed down. Now, there's no great surprise about that, because if you look, you realise all the pedestrians who go into these places probably are gone to other sorts of places, whereas when you have cars, you have people coming in there with an expectation to do shopping and go and do stuff. Now, the other issue you've got with closing this off for no cars is a security issue. And you have a hell of a security issue in Cuba Street and Manners Mall and all around that region. And I think half of that is because you haven't got moving traffic going through and keeping an eye on it. The other one, of course, is the third, is closing businesses due to no parking or customers not using public transport. It's hard to take home bulky or heavy items, which you've done in shopping, on the bus. And if you actually look at the present streets, they're quiet as mice. There's hardly a car going through and few pedestrians. Now, this may well be what has happened with COVID, but this is happening already. And the turnover in all the businesses is dropping also at the same time. And finally, the construction period. Whilst you are trying to do all this close down Lambton Quay, the general public are not going to go anywhere near this region because if you've got heavy construction, heavy noise going on and dust and activity, people are going to avoid the whole place. Victoria Street was classic of this. You will all know that it actually closed down businesses there and they went broke. Now, keep on thinking about it because I'm terribly worried about it. And in summary, by the way, I suppose you'll be sending Wellingtonians to Lower Hutt to do their shopping. You'll be sending retail stores to the wall. Did I mention our guarantee? I'm very, very concerned about this because it is significant to Val and me, that amount of money. And you will be spending money on a dead duck. You know, we've already got a defunct library. I'm a library user and I'm appalled with the fact I can't go to a library to get a book I want. Stormwater system, which is shot, and also a rather dodgy freshwater system. And also, of course, thousands, well not thousands, but plenty of bike lanes which are not being used anywhere. What's wrong with the status quo?
5
The world
minutes.
is very
Your 5
different. It will
minutes
be
is
more
up.
difficult or different after we sort out this COVID thing.
It's just we've come to the end of the 5 minutes.
Excuse me, are you interrupting me?
Yes, yeah, we've just come to the end of the 5 minutes.
Right,
so
okay.
yes.
There's nothing wrong. Yeah, well, you were late. I'm late. What's wrong with the status quo? Our rates are increasing. Why not leave it as it is? It's actually working quite well without any other assistance from you guys.
Well, thank you, Sam, for coming to speak with us today. We appreciate you taking the time. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to welcome, I've got Jill Oakley and Simon Belden here from, they're going to come and talk to us about whenua ukaipo connectedness and an exhibition they want to share with us about. So thank you, welcome, nau mai. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Kia ora koutou, His Worship the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councillors, Simon Belden ahau, noho ana au te moto kairangi. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about whenua ukaipo connectedness, a very important exhibition that is going to be in Te Whanganui-a-Tara from the 31st of October to the 4th of November. This exhibition is inspired by celebrating and acknowledging the UN at 75 years, and it also investigates the Sustainability Development Goals. And it's the idea of Jill Oakley here, and she'll just tell us what
Very
inspired
quickly.
her to do it. Yeah.
Marina, everyone, thank you for this opportunity of being here. Look, I'm very honoured to be here in the middle of the strategy and policy meeting. You guys are vital in setting the policies, the direction going forward for sustainable communities' well-being. And I was very honoured to go to New York and attend the Sustainable Goals meeting there at the United Nations headquarters. Coming out of that meeting, I was inspired by the fact they set the SDGs, which I know you all do, and I'll speak very, very quickly on them. I was inspired by the ambition to improve the environment, to improve poverty and the well-being of all, equality, all these things that are very important for us to move forward. I just heard our last speakers, and I know it's a very complex world trying to get these issues together. Out of that was born the idea that I came up with whenua ukaipo connectedness. We're bringing together these elements in this exhibition, and I hope you share this with you. Thank you.
And the United Nations has endorsed the exhibition as an official 75th anniversary event, and there's some content coming from them soon by way of video. This exhibition also has a kaupapa Māori element to it. It has 8 Māori artists, and it has been led by Piri Koe, who is from Christchurch, a Māori artist. And a kaupapa Māori approach has been really celebrated by the UN. UN is very interested in Indigenous voices, and especially interested in the Indigenous voices from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And the kaupapa of the exhibition is being shared by all of the practitioners, which includes First Nations peoples from other countries as well. Grounding the exhibition is this work by Matua Bay, and he is from up in Gisborne. This work is from the earth. He talks about the clay being in the work. It's a warrior figure. It talks about courage, and of course we need a lot of courage as we face the sustainability issues that the world is facing at the moment. This work will be central to the exhibition and is driving the kaupapa of the exhibition. Here are the 17 artists. We have some international guests. We have a group of artists, Aboriginal artists from Australia coming. We also have an artist from Hawaii, an Indigenous artist from Hawaii, and of Indian and other descent artists from Australia as well, and a huge mix of cultures. So it's an exhibition that represents many cultures, but is grounded in Indigenous thinking and grounded in kaupapa Māori thinking. Each artist has been given the job of taking their work and relating it to one of the 17 United Nations Sustainability Goals. This artist, Shane Tawhiri, has chosen the goal of climate action, and his work, you might be familiar with it. He was inspired by the first images of Earth from space, which were taken around the time of the moon landing. And he said that those photographs of Earth, the first time the people of the planet saw their beautiful planet from a distance, moved us and actually started a lot of the climate change kind of movements way back in the 60s. So his work investigates that sort of space and time, and is one example of the 17 different experiences people have when they come to the exhibition. Exhibition is at the Public Trust Hall. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. It's a gorgeous venue and a great asset for the city. Don't need to tell you how hard it's been to find a space. It's been very difficult to find a space with length because people shifted all their conferences, etc., to the second half of the year because of COVID. So we're fitting into a very small amount of time. We can't touch the walls in that beautiful building, as you can imagine, so we have to build and install all these walls ourselves. They need to also be able to be recyclable to stick with the kaupapa of the exhibition. It's going in a very short time. It's up for a very short amount of time. That increases the cost, increases the risk, but we have a wonderful, highly competent production company called Cannibal doing that. It is having an economic impact in the sense of employing production managers and artists and crews and of course using that venue, which we know is important, getting the arts sector back up and running at this time. Wā Kōrero is our public program that will run throughout the exhibition. It's on every day. One of the major parts of this is kōrero between the artists and also some guest scientists and some political thinkers as well. So, for example, we may have a climate scientist talking from, in this case, his perspective on climate, and we are now at the same time as having an artist talking from his or her perspective on thinking about how their work reflects those kinds of themes and understanding it. We also have two guests, Dr. Selina Marsh, who's a poet and celebrated actually, just winning a New Zealand Book Award, and also Rob Thorne Tongoporu, a Māori instrumentalist who will do a collaborative work. Rob Thorne will also play with each of the Māori works acoustically, with each of the Māori works in the exhibition on the Sunday. Kohanga Reo are being invited for 3 sessions and fully in Te Reo Māori to go through the exhibition, and we're in negotiation with Wellington Museums Trust about schools coming as well, so we're grateful for the partnership that we have with them. So quite a deep program, things happening every day. You all will be invited, and we really do hope you get time to come and join us. There is also an opportunity for each of those sessions to be introduced by one of our partners, and we would hope the Wellington City Council might have a representative at least one of those, and of course also at the opening, which will be at 11 o'clock in the morning on the Saturday, which we have support through Toi Māori Aotearoa for mana whenua to bless the space and welcome people into this multicultural, Indigenous-led exhibition. Everything that happens in the Wā Kōrero series of talks and events will be filmed and go live to Facebook, of course, and then be put up onto our website here, which will also have photographs, professionally done photographs of all of the works in situ in the exhibition. Now, this is incredibly important because this is where the UN will share our work and the stories and the themes and the discussion that carries on in the exhibition globally with audiences all around the world, and also means that the work and the ideas and the story can carry on forever, and it is another way that we can help promote Wellington's role in investigating and thinking about sustainability. Exhibition, by the way, very happy to be at Public Trust because it's located so close to government, so it, the perspective of government and the thinking that's going on is part of, in a sense, the exhibition. Although it can be seen from any, it's not a particularly political thing, it can be seen from any particular perspective. But this global distribution of what's happening here in Te Whanganui Atara through the UN network is one of the most exciting things about this beautiful thing that Jill has created. These are all our supporters. We're very grateful to have them. We're very grateful to Absolutely Positive Wellington City Council for your support through 2 grants. Creative New Zealand and UNESCO are great out there because we're just waiting for confirmation on funding for them. It's a very expensive event. If they don't come in, it's going to be very challenging for us. So if anybody's got any ideas on how we'd make up for that, if those things don't fail. We made it through the first round with UNESCO, looking very encouraging there, and we'll see how we get on with Creative New Zealand. Kia ora koutou, any questions?
Ngā mihi, we do. He pātaia Councillor Paul.
Atamari, he mihi mai oha kia korua mō tēnei kaupapa nui e noho ana I te marama o Mahuru Māori. Thank you so much for this presentation. It looks really exciting. I was just wondering what made this different in the organisation of this exhibition that made it differ from kind of non-Indigenous exhibitions that we see. So what kaupapa Māori methods did you employ in the organisation of this kaupapa?
Yeah. So we got advice from Toi Māori Aotearoa. The organisation that's running it, the GB Trust, is Kaupapa Pākehā. The curator is a Māori woman, and she is using Māori values, a kaupapa Māori approach to the themes of the exhibition, so how to interpret the United Nations themes, for example, through a Māori lens. Of course, there is 8 Māori artists, and they are all collaborating and sharing their ideas with each other and with the other artists in the exhibition. And the Matua Bay's work, which I haven't really done justice to because it would take about a minute to kind of really explain it, but when you look at the translation, for me, the translation of the kaupapa Māori ideas into English, you end up with this very powerful set of values, of challenges, of activities, actions, things that need to take place, things that should happen, and that has been shared with all of the other artists, and obviously will be shared with all of the audiences as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora korua, thank you very much. That's all our pātai today, so thank you for coming to share with us. It's really exciting. Look forward to seeing the exhibition. So now I'd like to welcome Benoit Petz. I understand you're representing an organisation here. So no fly zone, and so you've got 10 minutes, same as the last group. And if you do want to allow some time for questions, feel free to do that.
I'd love to.
Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, everyone. My name is Benoit Petz, and I'm not grumpy, but I'm here to talk about an issue we're having in the eastern suburbs, which is a noise that is generated by the recreational activity, that is the aircraft, recreational aircraft. So this was an issue that existed well before the lockdown. However, during the lockdown, of course, we've all enjoyed the peace and the quiet of the lack of engine noise. We saw the birds coming back. There was a huge improvement for the well-being. And what we'd like to do is that now that normal life has partially come back, is to consolidate on the positive that came out of this unusual and difficult period. So what is the issue we're talking about here? So recreational aircraft use the eastern suburb as a circuit for their activity. While doing so, they create a constant noise background. What you see on the right-hand side on the screen is a map made out of GPS traces that is publicly available, and this is the traffic on one day. It's not everything. To create to gather the GPS trace, you need a device that's only going to be made mandatory from mid next year. So this is really probably 60 to 70% of the traffic, of the air traffic that circle the peninsula. And when they do so, they basically fly low and they fly slow. It's create a constant engine background noise. So why is it an issue? Continuing on this topic. So when suffering this particular issue, I was wondering, is there any added value for the community and the thousands and tens of thousands of people who actually suffer this? And the answer is no. They're transporting everyone. They're having a beautiful, amazing time up there in the air. It's, I would love to be with them. However, I'm on the ground. And for the 2 or 3 people who are in this aircraft, there are thousands of people who are receiving that noise. So we think it's a bit unfair. It's also, I would say, antisocial. But what does it sound like? So there was the option of, okay, so I can't, so there was basically this little video which was playing what it sounded like when they fly above. I actually thought about the idea of getting run in loop while I was doing this presentation, but I would be not too kind to you guys and a bit disturbing. So instead, I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is what we've done so far. So we went to see the Aurora Club to have a discussion with them. The answer is we are operating within the law, within the legal framework. We are we can't change our operations. This is the way it is, and you chose to live next to the airport, so you just got to live with it, which I thought was bit rich, to be honest, because if I apply this to myself, because I was there before my neighbors, I could do whatever I want, right? Because I was there first. I think we all live in a community. We all share a space, and the fact that they hijack the soundscape to everyone is not right. So we did have discussions with the regional council to check what is the legal framework. So basically what it's done, it's measuring the noise exposure over a 90 days period, rolling. So because they don't fly every day, especially when it's windy or when it's rainy, which is coincidentally when I want to stay inside as well, then they're always safe within the limits. But when I want to be outside, or when we want to be outside and enjoy the outdoors, the beach, just being outdoor, they go out as well. And sometimes they do it, throughout like several days in a row. So what we've done as well is launching a petition. Sorry, it's just going to go backwards a little bit. We launched a petition. It was difficult to reach the community. We wanted this petition to be hosted by the City Council. We couldn't do this because it's not entering the jurisdiction of the City Council, so we had to use change.org basically. But despite the fact that it was hard to reach the community, we still got 61 signatures, which could have been much more if we had been able to reach the community as we wanted. So what we want to do is create a better Wellington, really, which is, greener, quieter, which acknowledge that we have an issue with climate change, that while a lot of people are making efforts to reduce their emissions, some of us are just, bluntly enjoying themselves with mechanical sports. So for all those reasons, we think it would be a good idea if we could contain this activity. And this brings me to what we need from the council. So first of all, it would be really good if the council could acknowledge that there is indeed an issue, that we probably should try to do something about it. And doing so, create a task force to deal with issues that come out of the airport. Land expansion, noise pollution, air pollution, and all those things, to sit alongside the community, the people, and help in the negotiation with different parties. That task force would be made of elected members, but also officers. And of course, the council is in this privileged position where you guys own, we own collectively 30% of the airport, so we have some ability to apply some pressure there. There are some legal tools that can be put down if required, such as bylaws, district plan, and all that, to contain the airport activity, to make it less a nuisance for the residents. And but before that, just start a conversation with the different parties, the CIA, the airport, and the Aero Club. So what would be a good outcome if we were creating this task force and starting negotiation and discussions with the Aero Club in particular? Well, a good outcome would be to contain the operations of the club in time, to say, for example, you can only operate within those time frames, only Saturdays but not Sunday, or only Sundays but not Saturday, or perhaps circle the peninsula 10 times a day, no more, and not 40, 50, or sometimes 60 as they do right now. That would actually reduce the impact. We could actually also ask them to fly further north, where there's no houses. At the moment, they're flying above houses. And I will also drop here that a couple of weeks ago, there was this tragic incident on the Kapiti coast, where one of those planes crashed. And we don't want to see that, of course, on top of a high residential area like Myanmar. So that would be something we could factor in as well. And then also what I'd like to do is ask them for a roadmap for when they're going to transition to electric flying. Because if they were going electric, and you can actually buy recreational aircraft today electric off the shelf, it's available. If they were flying electric, the noise impact and the air pollution would drop significantly. That's it in a nutshell. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Are there any Pātai councillors? I think you've been very clear. Thank you, Benoit. Ngā mihi.
Welcome,
Thank
welcome.
you for coming in to kōrero. Oh, Councillor Pena and then Mayor Foster. They're all coming forward now.
Sorry, it actually really is more a question of officers, that whether they can provide a response, because I was just talking to Councillor Paul about what, just in terms of the institutional rules for airports is a little bit tricky. So Moana, would you be able to have a look into that? That would be super helpful. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you.
Mayor Foster.
Kia ora, Benoit. Nice to see you here. Two questions for me. You may or may not be able to answer. Officers may be able to answer them, but or not. Has this changed during the lockdown, or sort of the, I guess, post lockdown, because there is less commercial traffic and therefore more space that recreational traffic is taking up?
Definitively. So before lockdown, we used to have perhaps 2 planes in the air.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at 3 or 4 circling. So there's not even an interruption in the noise. It's just continuous.
Yeah.
And it's if you had been able to hear, it's pretty severe.
Yeah, that was my expectation, because the airport for quite a long time had sort of been squeezing recreational air traffic down, because it just gets in the way of the commercial traffic. But if the commercial traffic's dropped, then the recreationals obviously come back in again a bit more. Okay, and the second one is there is a noise, an airport noise committee for the eastern suburbs. I don't know whether you've spoken to them at all.
So we haven't spoken to them.
Yeah.
Reality is that they are operating within their rules, within the legal framework. They have also a tool they call WebTrack, which is the airport said it's not they don't have to provide it. It's not mandatory. However, and it's not even real time. It's actually 24 hours delay between the actual facts and when it's being measured and made available publicly. The thing is, what we have done, however, is spoke separately to CAI, to the airport, and to the Aero Club. And what they say is basically, well, it's not me, it's them. We fly there because the CAI tells us. And then the CAI said, well, it is the airport. And the airport said, well, we don't have any control on this. So what would be really useful would be to have, again, a task force that should really exist beyond this particular issue, to put all those people together and find a solution to minimize the impact on the community. That would be really useful, because when they are all in the same room, they can't do this anymore. They can, but less.
Yeah.
Kia ora.
Thank you.
Thank you, Benoit, for being very clear, and thank you for coming in to kōrero with us. All right, councillors, so we're now ready to get underway. Thank you, public participants, for coming in this morning. And now I'd like to invite Deputy Mayor Free to introduce the e-petition to pedestrianise Courtenay Place.
Right, thank you. And I'd just like to begin by actually thanking Mr. Sean Murray, who is the director of the Malthouse, who in Courtenay Place, who organised the petition, which gained over 1,000 signatures. Not necessarily all from Wellington, but that's still an impressive number of signatures. I'd also like to just thank Vida and Moana for taking the time to prepare this really, I think, really full response, which gives us a little bit of a steer as to how to deal with this with the petition request. So the petition asks that we consider full pedestrianisation of Courtenay Place. And that while that would be in some ways a really lovely thing to be able to do, at the end of it all, the staff recommendation is that we are not able to do that because of the constraints that, well, several things really. One, this area is under consideration as part of the Golden Mile with Let's Get Welly Moving, and it wouldn't really be practical, and this has been borne out by Greater Wellington as well as our own officers. It's not really considered practical to remove the buses and the public transport network from Courtenay Place. So while we could maybe do some things to remove or reduce private vehicles and create more pedestrian space, we would probably want to keep the buses for various reasons. When it was trialled, it became evident that it's quite problematic to try and stop the buses. It just puts pressure on the side streets. It means that people are not so confident about where to find the bus, because it might be in one place during the day and another place in the evening. So for various reasons, full pedestrianisation is not recommended by our staff. But on the other hand, it is clear that we do want to do something to improve the area and to make it more appealing. Businesses want us to do that. I think Wellingtonians want us to do that. And we will continue to look for ways over and above the Let's Get Welly Moving initiative to continue to improve the area. When I went down with the Mayor and Councillor O'Neill a few days ago, I think it was last Saturday night, we did see evidence that there are issues, the area does need a lift. And yeah. Oh, no, well, there were other councillors there earlier on, but we were there a little bit later. Probably other people were in different places, but we were down there at Courtenay Place at about 1:30, the three of us. And it did become evident that there's a lot that could be done to make the area work better. The current bus shelters are a little bit problematic in that they divide the pavement. So there are things we definitely need to consider, but I am happy to take officer advice myself that the full pedestrianisation is probably not the way to go. So I bring this petition to you, and I don't know if we do need a seconder, and it's open for some debate.
I think
it's not the petition I'm bringing to you, it's the paper that's resulted from the petition with the response.
I think Mayor Foster is going to second this.
I don't need to say.
Cool, thank you. So we've got first on the list is Councillor Calvert.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to move my amendment, which is to be seconded by Councillor Paul, and I'll talk to that and to the overarching paper at the same time. As Councillor Free noted, that this paper is a result of a petition started by Sean Murray, a business owner, on Courtenay Place. And Sean actually contacted me when he first put the petition up because of his concerns around Courtenay Place. Using examples that are often overseas about how often precincts like this can be better utilised for activities during the day, helping to support the local economy, but also making it also safe as well to be. And on this very topic, Councillor Paul, as the portfolio leader of city safety, and myself as economic development portfolio leader, we've been actively looking at how we can take this forward. Now, acknowledging that the financial situation we're in at the moment and going forward, we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. We know there's a piece of work by Let's Get Welly Moving, but at the end of the day, the Let's Get Welly Moving is a transport project or program of work. It is not. It doesn't start with the primary objective as being placemaking. So this amendment is really just ensuring that we are leveraging off any other opportunities we have around the space when we are replacing lighting, whether we're replacing footpaths, that we actually give some thought to designing the space much better, acknowledging that buses will still go through, but there's a lot more other opportunities that we can do. But I don't want to make a rod for our own back by sort of requesting that we spend a couple of extra $1 million when we probably don't have that money at the moment. But at least it gets it into the system, so to speak, for future thinking around this space, and acknowledging the space needs to be a space for everyone as well. So not just the late night revelers, but also those people going for a meal in the early evenings, whether it's before or after a show, for people during the day, visiting the businesses or going to the cafe, and it is a sort of local area for those many people that are living in the central city, and especially with children as well. So I think Councillor Paul and I make a pretty good team on this. We come from slightly different perspectives, but we do find a lot of common ground in the way forward. So I'm pleased to move this. I'm looking for your support. And as I said, Councillor Paul will be seconding it. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Paul.
Reserve my right.
Would anyone else like to speak to this amendment? Mayor Foster.
I thought it was appropriate to speak now rather than once we had the amendment rather than substantive. So look, put it that way. I think this is eminently sensible. I think one of the things, and I think Diane, Councillor Calvert, you're quite right that the kaupapa of Let's Get Wellington Moving, it needs to take more cognizance of the place. And I think actually, I mean, the public participant this morning, Mr. Cranfield, was essentially highlighting the same kind of thing in a different way. That the place is really important. That transport's there to serve the places that it serves, not to be the destined. That it's not the outcome in its own right. Obviously, we need to get Wellington moving, but at the same time, we need to make sure we don't kill the patient while we do it. So I think we have the opportunity with the Golden Mile work to be able to do some things with Courtenay Place, which can hopefully deliver all the outcomes that we're looking for, both in terms of place and in terms of transport movement. It's certainly pretty evident from the advice we've had from, from a nighttime economy perspective, that some more people space will be valuable to try and make the place safer, to reduce the potential for conflict. We certainly had some of those, as Sarah pointed out, those areas pointed out to us on Saturday night, which were of most concern in that respect. So I think that if we can do all these things as part of that budget and not have extra expense, I completely agree with you there. I think it's an opportunity to do that. And I think the Nighttime Economy Forum, what was quite encouraging is that we've been told this week that there is absolutely a discussion going on between the transport people and Let's Get Wellington Moving and the people who are looking at it from a safety and amenity perspective in terms of the nighttime economy. So I think we'll be able to get a good outcome from this, and I'm very happy to support the amendment.
Kia ora. Next on the list is Councillor Matthews.
Kia ora koutou. I think we need to coin a new phrase, and it's not very catchy, but public transportisation, which is, so I maybe need to work on that one. But, I do think that, there is, quite a broad commitment to the change to make our CBD more people-centred. And I was talking to someone the other day, actually. I was with a friend in Lido, and I kind of felt like I was I was sitting in car land rather than human land. It really was, the space very much seems kind of the cars moving around is the sort of the central purpose, and actually it's not a very nice environment. So not directly relevant to Courtenay Place, but I do think we need to continue to make moves in this space. And I guess I would just also say that I do see Let's Get Wellington Moving as a place making project. I also see it as an accessibility project, maybe not happening very effectively at the moment, but I really want to get that embedded in there. But and perhaps we need to do a better job of the transport that we need. We're enabling people to live their lives in a certain way, and that's what Let's Get Wellington Moving is all about. By moving more people with fewer vehicles, where that's a path to, improving our lifestyle as Wellingtonians, cutting down the amount of time we need to sit in a bus in traffic, or making it easier to walk around the city, all of those things. So I do see it as placemaking, and, I think probably, as a council, we need to tell a better story about how we can, I think Planning for Growth and Let's Get Wellington Moving sort of coming together to improve the lifestyle for Wellingtonians. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Young.
Thank you. So I will support this amendment, but I'd just like to, a couple of things. First of all, Courtenay Place is my doorstep into Wellington. I go through it most days, twice a day at least. It's really scuzzy and often feels quite threatening, and that's even just during the day. But just on relationship to the Golden Mile, which people have been referencing, there's an article in today's Herald that New Zealand retailer survival is on a knife edge, and I am very concerned about the possibility that the Golden Mile consultation is going to kill our retail and hospo, And in fact, we can't afford the Golden Mile proposals because, as it was pointed out to us yesterday, we have some really big financial issues. And so I think the whole Golden Mile proposal should be postponed. We can't be the ones who turn off the life support switch for our retail. So this is not the time to be pedestrianising it, even though I love the idea of pedestrianisation. It's just time. It's the wrong time.
Councillor Rush.
Thanks, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I support the amendment. In fact, in the context of the discussion around the recent violence in and around Courtenay Place, I did put a blue sky idea forward that as part of Let's Get Wellington Moving, maybe we need to have a vision for the whole precinct, a bicultural vision with an iwi theme to rival the likes of Rotorua, so that, you know, it would become a destination in itself for daytime visitors from the vessels and elsewhere when they come back. You know, maybe a Wellington history walk, iwi at one end, Taranaki Street, of course, and then moving through down to Queen Victoria, where we've got the statue at the other end, which would bring early settlers in. And it would nicely dovetail with Te Papa and the convention centre and so forth. So that was just a blue sky idea thrown out there. But I do have concerns, as Councillor Young has raised. And another, I also am slightly disappointed that the Let's Get Wellington Moving plan is not that ambitious. It really is simply adjusting Courtenay Place and elsewhere on the Golden Mile to make it more of a bus lane, and I felt that that area cries out for something more. And whilst you know, I know it's probably too late, but the Wellington Party did actually campaign on a trackless tram going up there basically all day and night as an option, you know, but I do think that I would like to see a little bit more thought put into how we could meet, you know, Sean's aspirations in this area, and I'm going to follow up in that regard.
Councillor Condé.
Kia ora, thank you. I think it's fascinating that people feel that Let's Get Wellington Moving Plan is not ambitious enough. I think, you know, the option 3 that we had put out was very, very ambitious, increasing, you know, pedestrian space by up to 75% in some areas. I think it's really interesting. The Golden Mile consultation has brought out quite different views, and from different ends of the city. We've had quite a lot of retailers, Cranfields, who are down at the Lambton Quay end of the city, who had a lot of concerns about the proposal, and yet we've, at the Courtenay Place end of the city, we've got people begging us to get on and get some things done. So I think it's a great opportunity. The staff at Let's Get Wellington Moving are looking at that and thinking about how we might take a precinct approach, or possibly look at the development of the Golden Mile in sections, and I think that might be a great way to go about it. Maybe we need a bit more time at the Lambton Quay end, but at the Courtenay Place end, we've got a lot of enthusiasm from the community, as this petition shows. So I think, you know, Let's Get Wellington Moving are really looking at how we might chunk this project up and find ways to move forward, because I think that the opportunities we have on the Golden Mile, the Courtenay Place section of Golden Mile, are fantastic, and there's a lot of really great work that could be done around the placemaking. And I just want to again acknowledge that yes, Let's Get Wellington Moving is a transport project, but essentially at its heart it's a city shaping project, and we all know that Mr David Chick spent many years working very hard to make sure that it was a city shaping project, and it was seen as a placemaking project, not solely as a transport project. Our staff are doing a great job looking at the placemaking opportunities here, working with Let's Get Wellington Moving to deliver a really great vision for this part of the city. And I think it's a challenge that we all need to take on, that we need to do a better job about telling the story around these changes, telling the story of the Golden Mile, about how we want to change this place in our city and make it a destination. We want Courtenay Place to be a great place to spend time, to hang out any time of day or the evening. We want you to feel safe. We want you to feel welcome. And that is what this is all designed to deliver. So I welcome this amendment, and, you know, I can assure you that Let's Get Wellington Moving are very cognizant of our responsibilities to the place element of this, and making sure that we move that forward. it's absolutely an essential part of the program that we can tell a great story about the city and about why people want to come and spend time here. And that's, I think, where we'll be able to see moving forward as we work with the staff on how we'll progress the Golden Mile after this first round of consultation.
Councillor Fitzsimons.
Yeah, just briefly, very happy to support this amendment. And I guess I just was a bit concerned with Councillor Calvert's introductory comments, though, where she makes a very good case for improved placemaking and public amenity of Courtenay Place, and then said, but we shouldn't spend any money on it, because I don't think that's a way to build a city and to build exactly the kind of places and pride that she's trying to achieve. So I think we have to realise that it is going to cost money, and we are going to need to invest. And I would actually say that in a post-COVID world, now is the very time to invest in big civic projects and to make sure that we get Let's Get Welly Moving, that Let's Get Welly Moving continues. I don't want to see any delays, any hold-ups, any attempt to talk down the confidence that we should have in our city, because there will always be reasons not to do a project, but we actually just have to get on and do it. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and there is going to be throughout this project a lot of businesses who unfortunately are going to face some interruptions. They're going to be there are going to be times when there's going to be significant roadworks throughout our city at all different areas, and one of the things that we have to do is make sure that we talk to those businesses about it, explain to them why Let's Get Welly Moving is so important, but also just continue to do this important work, because it is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and I'm worried that if we're not careful, we'll talk the city out of it and talk ourselves out of it. So I am very happy with this amendment. I do think that we need to also consider some more immediate changes to the Courtenay Place precinct in Te Aro Park, particularly around lighting. It was very dark. We noticed at Te Aro Park it was very dark where the big tree is. We do need more CCTV cameras, and we do need to take other more immediate attempts to improve safety, because there's a lot of urban form there that doesn't create a safe environment.
Kia ora, Councillor Wolfe.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Firstly, I'm backing this amendment. Secondly, I'd just like to acknowledge Val and the valuable work and pioneering work that you've done in the city to bring a retail venture to Lambton Quay and to keep it going, and then also to expand on it. Councillor Fitzsimons, you talked about confidence, and I think that at the moment the city does need confidence, and our retailers need confidence as well. I'm speaking as a retailer on Lambton Quay. I'm the only one of you that is around this table, and I cannot see my business surviving in Lambton Quay as it stands at the moment, because we don't have confidence. The parking's gone for a start. I completely support Councillor Young's view that we should not be doing changes on the Lambton Quay part of the Golden Mile just at the moment. In fact, we should think very carefully about what we're doing with our spends and where we prioritise. And I also endorse Councillor Calvert's perspective. In some ways, placemaking should come first, because that's what gives the confidence. Transformational projects, which I was told the Island Bay Cycleway was one, had no placemaking values to it at all. So, it's all very well to talk about giving people confidence and talking about what we're going to do. There's a lot of talk around this table. We actually don't get in, and we don't inspire confidence at times. And investment is not just in Councillor Fitzsimons. It's not just in financial terms. It's actually a lot in relation to the time that we spend and how we use that time. And I think that's really, really important. Council does not value its time and its expertise enough. I think that we could make transformational changes in the Golden Mile, which would be very positive and very confidence building in a very short space of time. That would also increase safety and vibrance. And I endorse Councillor Calvert's amendment, because I think that the placemaking and how a place looks is very, very important. So, yeah, I'd just rest there.
Councillor Pennant.
Kia ora, thank you very much. I'd just like to thank colleagues for making lots of good points. Councillor Condi, I've waited a long time for placemaking and transport to be brought together. We had to have a lot of arguments to get there, and so it is really good that now that we can have a paper like this, and thank you Councillor Calvert and Councillor Paul for bringing the amendments. Excellent. Retail. So we're going to have a hard conversation about retail, right? Because actually it is changing, and we're going to have an economy that is also going to have to change. We are not getting out of COVID anytime soon. You know, people's shopping habits have been changing for some years. It's just difficult, and no one has any real answers. And I think just saying, oh, it's just about providing parking will not get us to the solutions we need. I'd just like to pick up the point too about safety and security. Yes, I do believe in good design and good lighting, but I also don't want to make it about the potential victims. I've really strong concerns about that. Let's put the responsibility where it lies with the perpetrators, and no good lighting will stop people offending. And we have a serious problem in this country with violence, particularly against women and children, and that's where some of the things need to change. But I certainly will be very keen to support any initiative that does help with better urban design to make it safe. And Councillor Free, I agree that bus shelter is really problematic right there. And partly we've been responsible for that because we've allowed people to come out and put their tables out. So there's very little space. And Councillor Fitzsimons, just finally, I'd like to say thank you for saying we are going to have to spend money. I agree, and I agree with you that this is the time for the state and local government to be investing seriously in good infrastructure. So keen to look at what we do through this next LTP to build confidence in the city.
Kia ora, so I'll just speak briefly. I just want to, I guess, say that we've got some interesting contradicting statements going on about having confidence and then talking about things failing. The self-fulfilling prophecy is a real thing, and if we say we're going to fail, we probably will. So I think the most important thing is to acknowledge that it's a hard time for people, but also to acknowledge that change can bring opportunity and prosperity too. We do know international evidence shows us that in Madrid, when they pedestrianised, there was an over 9% increase in spend. So we do know that there is actually evidence that that this can actually be transformational. And I think Councillor Pennant is absolutely right that things have been changing for some time now. This is not actually just a result of COVID. And we need to do everything we can to support businesses through this time. But that doesn't mean that we shy away from the fact that there are important changes that need to be made, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that, but we don't forecast a doom that there's going to be a terrible outcome, because that will actually lead people to think that that's already happening. I do actually believe that lighting will make a difference. I've been in places where I feel a lot safer when it's lighter. I know that it's much harder to grab someone's handbag or grab them when people can actually see it happening. So I think common sense says that lighting will make a big difference. I think we've finished that. We can go back to Councillor Paul if you want to speak.
Kia ora. Cool, that was good to hear the consensus around the table. I just wanted to talk about some of the opportunities that may arise before we get those kind of early deliverables from Let's Get Wellington moving for the space, and kind of a bit of the intention behind this amendment. So Jill and Councillor Day and I have been talking to mana whenua, and I guess alluding to Councillor Rush's point about telling the history of Te Whanganui a Tarabera. We know that mana whenua have ambitions in this part of town with Te Aro Pā, and we also know that there are significant opportunities, particularly through the City Recovery Fund, for them to be able to tell that story and to develop that site better. So I think, like Councillor Fitzsimons says, we actually need to put our money where our mouth is when it comes to all of these different elements that we've talked about. So hopefully, if anything comes through there, we can support them in doing that and telling the story, because even business owners around the area have said that they believe that if we can tell the story better in that area, that people will have more pride of place and will, I guess, think about their behaviour a little bit more, which kind of goes on to Councillor Pannett's point. I agree with you, Councillor Day. I think lighting does make a massive difference, and I think the environmental design does make a massive difference to the perception of safety, the actual people's safety themselves. But I think I take your point that actually, in terms of the government, we need to be investing in actual consent education throughout schools, because we know that that's a huge driver for a lot of problematic behaviour. Also just wanted to say that we've got another opportunity coming up through the review of the footpath management and trading in public places policy, which will allow us to look at opportunities for placemaking and obviously the Let's Get Wellington Moving stuff. So yeah, I think we need to make sure we put our money where our mouth is. And one last thing I just wanted to mention was that there was a tweet this week that was someone saying that there are a lack of places for people to sit down in the city, particularly when it's a crappy day like yesterday. So I think that's something else we need to be looking at. Where can people sit? Because in our libraries there aren't many spaces to sit, and I accept that that's because of COVID as well. But I went into Te Awe the other day and I couldn't find a seat. So I think that's something we need to think about as well. And the bus stop, I think, will be a bit difficult because, as Moana's already told, I've been chasing up every kind of element of Te Aroha Park that needs to be improved for safety, and that corridor is a massive wind tunnel, so we actually need to think about whether it might actually deter people from catching buses if they stand there and just get messed up by the wind. So yeah, so I think we've got to do our work on this and make sure we're not doing any knee-jerk reactions, particularly to the increase in violence in the area that we've seen post-COVID. But yeah, anyway, good to work with you again on another hopefully successful amendment, and thanks for bringing it forward.
Councillor Calvert, would you like a right of reply? I'm aware that you were running very late for
I am very late.
need to be.
I've given my apologies, but look, I have to take the opportunity with the right of reply because I didn't realise there was so much going to be said about Let's Get Wellington Moving, because I'd actually avoided that because the amendment was really just to add to whatever they may well do. And thank you, Councillor Condi and Councillor Matthews, who comment about placemaking. Yeah, look, I think, it should be there, up there, first up. But what we've seen to date, it isn't. And you could see that by the options for the consultation that have gone out about around the Golden Mile. There wasn't a lot paid to placemaking. And in fact, there wasn't a lot paid to pre-engagement with a lot of those businesses on the Golden Mile. And that's why we've got such concern now. If we perhaps, as the Let's Get Wellington Moving program, had actually spoken to them before they formulated their options, we may have been in a better position. And I know a couple of councillors have supported pausing Councillor Young and Councillor Wolfe, and I absolutely agree with that. And I've actually publicly stated this week that I think we should pause the Golden Mile consultation. I mean, this was work planned pre-COVID. Our retailers, our businesses are in a very fragile state, and their focus is on keeping their businesses running and surviving. And why can't we pause the work on the Golden Mile part, or at least part of it, for 6 to 9 months? I think that's something that we should be thinking about, especially given that the proposals that were out for consultation never actually engaged with those retailers in the first place. Yes, and comment was made about our previous chief city planner. This is a city shaping project, but again, the project still seems very focused on roads. Councillor Fitzsimons, you said, you said this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to spend more money. Well, it is. But we're also dealing with, at the moment, before any cuts, at least a 15% rates increase next year. I just want to be prudent and not make an ad hoc decision. I think we have a process through the long-term plan as we work through that in big new project items. We've just signed off on our annual plan. This was not part of it. If we start adding stuff into our annual plan now for this current year, we have to take something off at least, but we're not proposing that. So I'm very happy to work constructively with my colleagues here, with officers, so that we do, when we come to our long-term plan, And when we go out for consultation, we have got a cohesive, a comprehensive, and a joined-up vision for the city going forward, but we won't be able to do everything that we want. And so, look, as this was just a tiny little amendment, just to make sure.
Tiny little right of reply, Helen.
That we do focus on making sure that we leverage off the opportunities that we've got going at the moment, and in the face of being prudent with our finances, that I am not proposing any more money at this stage, but that's not to say that that can't come, especially as part of our long-term plan deliberations. So thank you for your support. Brittany.
Thank you. We'll now put this motion to the vote. This amendment. Woohoo, unanimous. There we go. Just because we've gone over morning tea, because I've figured that Councillor Calvert didn't want to be even more late, do we have any further debate to this paper, or are we able to vote on it and then break for morning tea? Let's do that. Okay, so we're going to put it to the vote. Thank you.
Reply just to say I think that I really do need to thank Mr. Murray for actually allowing us the opportunity to have this really robust think about Let's Get Welly Moving, the context of the parts of Let's Get Welly Moving, you know, the Lambton Quay part, the Courtenay Place part, the kind of vision that we're collectively starting to form around it, and also the input that we're slowly getting from the public, which is helping shape these views. And I think that this has actually been extremely useful. I really like to thank him for the opportunity to have, to stimulate this discussion. And I can remember quite a few things have been said about Courtenay Place. One of the things that was said was about it being an arts and entertainment quarter, and that sort of stuck in my mind. And, I think we can start to formulate a really ambitious idea of what this could be, which we may not be able to deliver all at once. But the amendment, I'm very supportive of it because it does make it clear that we hold that vision and start to try and implement it at every possible time. I do want to defend the roles of cycleways and walkways. They actually do quite a bit to connect people to streets and add to that kind of sense of activity and vibrancy and give that sense of place. So the public transport is really important, the accessibility, the cycling, the walking, and a really rational think about what's also needed in terms of vehicles. And all of that, I'm sure, will come to pass as we continue to work on this. Let's put it to the vote so we don't take too much longer.
Just while we're voting, I just want to remind people, when you do a right of reply, you're really only replying to anything that came up, not introducing more ideas. So just to help us to really keep it tight. But yeah, voting is open. Oh, we've got a thumbs up. That's unanimous. So we'll come back at 11:10, and thank you very much. So now we're on to item 2.2, and I'd like to invite Councillor Condi to introduce the report.
All right, very quickly, the Safer Speeds Hearing Subcommittee has heard about safer speeds in the CBD, and then we heard about safer speeds in Karori, and there is now another safer speeds issue coming up that will be in Brooklyn. So we're just tweaking the membership of this committee so that the ward councillors in Brooklyn will both be on the committee and just kind of reorganising ourselves a bit. Thank you everybody who replied to my emails and made this all very straightforward. Thank you to Dem Services who worked out what the quorum needs to be with our new membership. That's pretty much all I need to say. I need a seconder.
Oh, I might have.
I think you're okay. Yeah, okay, Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to Councillor Condi for accommodating, and to say that I hope that the consultation and the subcommittee hearings in Brooklyn go as well as they did in Karori, and again to thank Councillor Condi for her leadership in that respect.
Great. Are there any other speakers to this paper? No?
You frightened us all.
Great. Let's vote. Let's vote. We could be finished soon. All right, that is unanimous. Right, Councillor Condi, back over to you again to introduce item 3.1, the report of the Safer Speeds Hearings Subcommittee meeting of the 19th of August.
Thank you. All right, so we had a great time hearing from residents of Karori about the suggestion to lower the speed limits here to 30 kilometres per hour. So it's two, as you all know, it's actually two separate 30 kilometre per hour zones, because in Karori they have two separate shopping centres, the Marsden Village and the Karori shopping centre. And there's kind of a big hill in the middle, so staff have presented these two options. We actually heard a lot of feedback from people who wanted us to extend the 30k to greater areas, extending it down towards the school or joining the two areas up. But as you all will also know, we actually can't extend broader than what we've consulted on. We can only agree to do less than what we've consulted on. So in this report, staff came back and talked about what the future options will be in this area. And particularly, we know that there's going to be a lot of work for staff coming up looking at the school speed limits, since the central government have asked us to review all the speed limits outside of schools in the next little while. There'll be more work in Karori looking at those speed limits in particular. I'll acknowledge that we certainly had a number of submissions, mostly written submissions that opposed this change. My impression of those submissions was it was mostly people who didn't see a current problem, which makes sense. Not everyone is going to experience the problems in the same way. So there were a bunch of residents in Karori who felt like there wasn't really a problem. They didn't see an issue with the status quo and would just be as happy to keep it the way it was. But when we had the hearings and we had everybody come in and speak to us, we almost universally heard from people who had concerns about the current safety of the arrangements, of being able to nip across the street, of being able to cycle through there, and who could really see how this would make a big difference to their safety and their ability to use the shopping centres and their places that are really the heart of their town centre in Karori. So we had a lot of really strong support, which was fantastic. It's always just enjoyable to hear from people in our community on a hearing like that. We really appreciated everyone who came in and gave their time. I think that's all I need to say to introduce this report. I haven't arranged a seconder. Would one of the ward councillors like to second? Councillor Matthews.
I'd like to acknowledge too that your beautiful pronunciation of Karori. It's lovely. Councillor Matthews.
Just happy to second and support this, and I think it's going to be a really positive change for Kaharori.
Woohoo, beautiful. Is there any other kōrero? Mayor Foster. I'm going to call it Karori. No, that's all right, but yeah, it's nice. It's better than Karori.
Just to say, I'm really pleased that we've got here to Councillor Condi. Thank you for your chairing of the process and the hearings, and to the officers who've worked very hard on this as well. Really appreciate the work that's been done. We're getting there. We're almost there with our 30k safer speed limits now across the city. Obviously, the CBD was a big step forward, and we up until now we only had the Karori ones, and then a number in the northern ward, so Tawa, Johnsonville, Newlands, and then that is job done. Have to be said that previous Northern Ward councils have been a little less enthusiastic, so hopefully we can finish the job there and do that, because this is all about trying to slow traffic down in areas which are people spaces and have a lot of people who are moving across roads and along roads, and so it fits with that the previous discussion we had about Courtenay Place, where there were some comments made about these centres of our suburbs and the centre of our central city being places for people, not just for vehicles to move forward, move through quickly. And I think the comment you made about the speed, that the people didn't see a problem, it's just you're slowing me down. That's exactly the same kōrero that we've heard from people every time we've done this. But I think the tide has changed, and I think that over all the years we've been doing this, we have we've seen more and more people come on board and say, actually, this is the right thing to do. So good to be here to do that. I think the other bit is that one of the reasons we held Karori back a little bit was because we did intend to put it alongside works in the town centre, which have not, that alignment hasn't quite happened. So I think we just get on with this, and I know that there are some amenity works planned, and just like again the CBD and other places, I think we should be doing some engineering to support the speed limit. The safer speeds, because speeds alone don't necessarily do the job. And the final point to make is that I think some people say, well, the police won't enforce it. Actually, when you ask them, they are more inclined to, and that's good. And I have actually seen the police out with speed guns in some of our suburban centres, and that is good to see.
Kia ora. Do you need a right of reply? I don't think anyone else wants to speak, so no, just cough. Oh. Mohi ora. Okay, so we will now go to vote.
Awesome.
It's unanimous. All right, kua mutu tēnei hui. E tū mo te Karakia mutunga. Unuhia, ki te uru tapanui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua. I te ara takatū. Koe rā e rongo, whakaaria ake ki runga. Kia wātia, ai rā ko wātia. Kia pai tō ahi. Have a good afternoon. These are going to stay kia pai tō ahi. These stay here, and then you'll be given an A4 copy at some stage. Next week. Cool, thank you.
Well, that's pretty fresh. Do nothing.
These apply to council and this, because I don't rise and say point of order. So you don't